This is RTT with Terry the Tiger.
Hello, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Random Talk Time. I am your host, Terry the Tiger, and do I have a good one for you today? Because today, everything that I'm about to tell you comes from the FBI website and an investigation that was done with the FBI from 2009 until 2015. Some of the documents comes from the FBI files, which later became available to the public in 2016. They closed this case as an unsolved cold case. To everyone who was working on the case, not active in the FBI, and who were retired agents or cold case investigators, found that to be a lie or a cover-up. Conspiracy theorists and many others believe Colbert's investigation to be true. So what was the investigation about? Well, you may know him as D.B. Cooper. You may not know him at all, but officially, his name was Dan Cooper. And on the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, a nondescript man calling himself Dan Cooper approached the counter of a Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. He used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Flight 305 bound to Seattle, Washington. And this began the greatest unsolved mysteries in FBI history. Cooper, who had appeared to be a quiet man in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a black tie and a white shirt. He ordered a drink, a bourbon soda, while mid-flight. A short time later, after 3 p.m., he handed the stewardess a note indicating that he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him. The stunned stewardess did as she was told. Opening a cheap attaché case, Cooper showed her a glimpse of a mass of wires and red-colored sticks and demanded she write down what he told her. Soon she was taking a note to the captain of the plane that demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. 3 hours later, when the flight landed in Seattle, the hijacker exchanged the flight's 36 passengers for the money and the parachutes. Cooper kept several crew members, and the plane took off again. They ordered the course for Mexico City. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, a little after 8 p.m., the hijacker did the incredible thing, and he jumped out of the back of the plane with the parachute and the ransom money. The pilots landed safely, and Cooper had never been seen again. So they say. The FBI had learned about the crime mid-flight and immediately opened an investigation that lasted for many years. They called it NORJAC, Northwest Hijacking. They interviewed hundreds of people, tracked leads across the nation, and scoured aircraft for evidence. By the 5-year anniversary of the hijacking, they had considered more than 800 suspects and eliminated all but 24 from the consideration. One person from their list, Richard Floyd McCoy, is still the FBI's favorite suspect among many. They had tracked down and arrested McCoy for a similar airplane hijacking and escape by parachute less than 5 months after Cooper's flight. But McCoy was later ruled out because he didn't match nearly identical physical descriptions of Cooper provided by the 2 flight attendants, and for other reasons. His alibi that night. Perhaps Cooper didn't survive his jump from the plane. After all, the parachute he used couldn't be steered. His clothing and footwear were unsuitable for a rough landing, and he had jumped into a wooded area at night. A dangerous proposition for a seasoned pro, which evidence suggests Cooper was not. This theory was given an added boost in 1980 when a young boy found a rotting package full of $20 bills, $5,800 in all, that had matched the ransom money serial numbers. So, where did DB come from? And why do we know him as DB Cooper? Well, media got one of the guys that was interviewed and questioned by the FBI. His initials were DB, and the newspapers ran with that, and it stuck. So since then, he was known as D.B. Cooper. But all this stuff comes from the FBI website, where it also states that Dan took off a tie before he jumped, and later that provided DNA evidence. So what or who was Colbert's investigation team investigating with the FBI if there is no leads? Well, in September of 2019, a judge released a secret FBI death file exposing Cooper as Robert W. Rackstraw, who died at 75 in July of 2019. He was a former U.S. Army pilot, paratrooper, and explosives expert, and he was also a CIA Black Ops man. The FBI document strongly suggests they believe it was him. Colbert also believes it is him and the FBI are covering for him. But why? Colbert was told by 3 separate intelligence agency committee sources, and they said he was a CIA freelancer before and after the hijackings, and that's why they protected him. The new files quoted leading FBI investigators who were convinced that Rackstraw was him. He got away with ransom, invested in property, and the FBI turned a blind eye, flat out lying and covering up his crimes to avoid embarrassing the government. That was said by former FBI agents. Dropzone.com for Cooperite researchers or anyone who wanted to help solve the D.V. Cooper case. It was started in 2008 by FBI agent Larry Carr, who had first sought help from the public to solve the mystery, had posted there in 2016. There are 1,057 subfiles in the Cooper case, each representing a subject that has been investigated. There is not one piece of verifiable evidence linking a subject to the case. While Colbert and his team of a dozen former FBI agents say they have found over 100 materials incriminating Rackstraw. Colbert had a neutral opinion from top experts look at the evidence. One was a former 2-time U.S. attorney, FBI agent, and San Francisco Law School Dean Joseph P. Ruscianiello, stating, "I have reviewed the materials provided by your investigation team and have concluded the evidence is clear and convincing that Rackstraw was Cooper." The FBI said their evidence was weak and concluded there isn't anything new out there at the 2016 news conference when closing their case. The FBI first started looking into Rackstraw in 1978 when he was accused of murdering his stepfather. He was found not guilty, but FBI had on file from Sacramento to the director of the FBI in 78, subject Norjack, armed and dangerous. Rackstraw's military record discloses he was forced to resign his first lieutenant commission in June 1971, and he was extremely bitter over his sentence. His description and sketch of the Norjack subject are very similar. When arrested by FBI in 78, he admitted to the arresting agent that he would be fully capable of successfully officiating the Norjack hijacking. In one statement to the Army, he wrote, "I can only hope that I will never use the training and education the Army gave me against the Army itself, as I would be a formidable adversary. As U.S. Marshals are transporting him, they should be warned that Rackstraw is a former Army Green Beret and Vietnam veteran and is highly skilled in the use of his hands and feet as weapons." This was just one of many incriminating evidence Colbert's team used, along with an old Pentagon file by the sleuths, has 9 points of match to Cooper's sketch, and he fits the hijacker's FBI profile. Colbert's team says he had a motive, as the hijacking took place only 5 months after the career soldier who was Special Forces training was kicked out for lying about his rank, medals, and college education record, as he was a high school dropout. Memos had been found from the booted lieutenant, then mailed his former brass a valid threat. That sounds familiar. I can only hope that I will never use the training and education the Army gave me against the Army itself, as I would be a formidable adversary. After the hijacking, he clashed with the law, teaching Shah's pilots to fly choppers in pre-revolutionary Iran, printed and delivered fake checks to banks, stole cars, aircrafts, and construction equipment. After about 22 cases of quarried dynamite and weapons from an army officials, they believe he sold them to various radical bomber groups. As stated before, in 78, he stood trial for murdering his stepfather, and when found not guilty, he faked his own death by calling in a Mayday crash by Monterey Bay, California. He was found a few months later and jailed 2 years. In all, he had 30 criminal titles while using fake identities in 5 countries. In the end, Colbert's prime suspect lived with his family in a wealthy Bankers Hill district in San Diego, California, and he also owned a boat shop, Coronado Precision Marine, and also had a 45-foot cruiser named Poverty Sucks. Shortly before Rockstar's death, he was asked and interviewed for a History Channel special, D.B. Cooper, Case Closed, where they get up and personal with him and ask him some questions.
Reasonable questions? I'm not D.B. Cooper. Go away. You're wasting my time and your time. Wouldn't an innocent man do that?
An innocent man would say no. When you ask him, are you D.B. Cooper?
Are you the person who boarded a flight on November 24th, 1971, identifying yourself as Dan Cooper?
Maybe
you
I
hijacked the plane when it was coming out of Seattle toward Reno? Did you
Maybe
jump
I
out?
wasn't clear, Jim. Maybe I wasn't clear. Don't
Are you
play,
that
don't,
person?
don't try and play Junior Dan
Are
Rather.
you D.B. Cooper?
I realized that this man is probably a sociopath, more recently known as a psychopath or an antisocial personality.
Clinically.
Clinically.
Did you board a Northwest Orient flight on November 24th, 1971?
What difference does it make?
As
yeah?
a name Dan Cooper, because if you're D.B. Cooper, the world would want to know your story, Bob.
Sure they would. So would the FBI and the secret indictment and Washington,
Bob,
D.C.
you're a folk hero. You're
Oh,
a folk
no,
hero.
come
Nobody
on.
cares.
Look,
But
the only
everybody
thing
wants
I
to know
have
the
is a
story.
Silver Star, a couple DFCs. Means nothing, okay? I helped a lot of guys in combat. That's
I
it.
have no doubt about that, but why would you say in your first trial that you had 40-plus commendations and 5 Purple Hearts?
Better
Do you
look
have
again.
5 Purple Hearts?
Purple Heart's nothing.
Are you
When
Lieutenant
something goes
Commander,
off,
or-
shrapnel goes off in your face and that's
So
all
then why do you
Purple
have a
Heart
Purple
is.
Heart plate?
Silver Stars, which were saving guys'
Why do you
lives.
have a Purple Heart plate?
Why do we have Silver Stars? Why do we have distinguished
But
flying?
if you're not telling the truth on something that simple, where does the
You
truth
haven't
begin?
told me that.
Did you board that Northwest flight and hijack it for
I don't think I've ever
$200,000?
been on a Northwest flight.
Why are you so evasive about what should be a simple thing to say
Because
no?
you guys make such a big deal out of it.
Highly respected former FBI Special Agent Jack Tremarco declares with conviction.
I think that Mr. Raxtra is D.B. Cooper. I think it's time for him to take credit for what he did.
He is the person of interest for Colbert's team, and according to his team, the FBI as well. Then he wasn't for the FBI. Is this possibly a cover-up or another cover-up by the U.S. government? And has it been solved by the people? Did Dan Cooper, the reason why we have X-ray scanning on bags and on us at the airport, did he even survive the landing? Or maybe he was someone else living a good life undetected this entire time. What we do know is that this is the highest paid unsolved hijacking in the world, and the world may never know the real identity of the man that has been known as D.B. Cooper for the last 40, almost 50 years.